We are just waiting for Mr. Lewis to arrive. Madam Coordinator, is the person that's phoning in, is that Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Chair, it is not.
Okay, thanks. Madam Coordinator, can you give Mr. Lewis a call?
Yeah, I'll do that
Thank
now.
you. There he is. Okay, I believe we have everybody present. Good morning and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Ottawa under the Planning Act. This video conference is also live streaming on YouTube. With me are my fellow panel members, Jocelyn Chandler, Stephen Lewis, Terrence Otto, and Martin Vervoort. My name is Fabien Poulin, and I will be chairing this hearing today. The procedure for this hearing will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with the agenda items in a different order. Committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition of each of the applications. Today, we'll hear oral submissions from any interested parties. Notice regarding minor variance applications, notwithstanding pre-consultation with city staff, is the responsibility of the applicant to identify all required variances accurately on the application to 1, add a new variance or increase the extent of the variance requested. These must be given in accordance with the Planning Act and may require the application to be recirculated for the next hearing date at a cost to the applicant at the prescribed fee. If an applicant amends their plans with no impact to the variances or to reduce the variances requested, recirculation may not be required. As part of the statutory notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. Without it, I may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. Can the coordinator confirm that we have received all the statutory declarations?
Mr. Chair, the oath was taken at the February 16th hearing for item 18, 3896 8th Line Road and 7968 Marbleville Road. The oath will need to be read for all the other applications today.
Thank you very much, Madam Coordinator. Okay. The committee may ask for a brief presentation of the application, followed by questions from members and submissions from the public. Please address your comments to the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary and your municipal address. The committee limits presentations to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the chair's discretion. Before we begin, we have 2 items of business to address. Does any member present need to declare an interest in any of the applications that are before us today or that are on the agenda of another committee panel? Yes, Ms. Chandler?
I would like to declare an interest. Panel 1, number 6, minor variance A-00026 at 44 Echo.
Thank you very much. We also have to adopt the minutes of the last or of public hearings, past public hearings. And I'd like to ask the panel to approve the minutes of February the 2nd. All those in favor of the minutes of February 2nd, please raise your hands. Those minutes are adopted. Now I'd like to ask the panel to approve the minutes of February 16. All in favor of approving those minutes, please raise your hands.
I'll abstain as I was not at that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Vervoort. Yes, these minutes, February 16, are approved. We'll now hear the applications scheduled for this hearing, and we'll deal firstly with any items that may be adjourned. Is there anyone present who wishes to request an adjournment of one of the applications scheduled for this hearing? We, as a panel, know of 11 of the 18 that need to be adjourned. I will first address those, and then I'll come back to the remaining applicants and see if they do need to have their applications adjourned. We will first deal with application number 1 that needs to be adjourned or is a requested adjournment. And application number 1 has Kelly Champagne. This is having to do with 198 Mississippi Drive. Are you available, Ms. Champagne or Mr. Champagne? I see Kelly down there. Are you available, Kelly? Not hearing you. It doesn't seem that you're muted. Hello, Kelly. I see your name there. Doesn't seem like you're muted.
Ms. Champagne, can you try calling in?
Okay, we'll step this one down for the time being, and we'll move on to application number 2. This is having to do with 111 Pine Brook Lane. Ms. Zander, are you available?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members.
Good morning, Ms. Zander. And are you looking to have this application adjourned today?
That wasn't our desire, but staff have requested an adjournment, have provided some comments that we need to address. So we are agreeable to an adjournment. We had discussed an adjournment to the hearing on April 20th with your staff. So if they're agreeable, that will work for my client.
Okay, Mr. Gordon, are you agreeable to an adjournment till April the 20th?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we're agreeable to the adjournment until April 20th.
Okay, I'd like to ask the panel for adjournment of this application to April the 20th. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is adjourned to April the 20th. Thank you, Ms. Zander.
Great, thank you.
Madam Coordinator, has Ms. Champagne made herself available?
She appears to have rejoined the call. We'll try to connect again.
Okay. Ms. Champagne, you are muted right now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Perfect.
Okay.
Ms.
So-
Champagne, are you looking to have your application adjourned today?
Yeah, so I just have a question about the adjournment. There's a statement that says it's unclear from the submission where the top of the bank is to ensure an EIS is not also required for development within 30 meters of that. So they're talking about the river bank there? Do you?
Ms. Ogden from the Conservation Partners, can you address that to Ms. Champagne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe this comment was made by city staff, but the setback would be from the normal high water mark is what is outlined in the zoning bylaw for the setback for 30 meters.
Thank you.
The high water mark being the floodplain?
No, it is based on that change in vegetation type, so would be a normal high water event, so not as great as the floodplain.
Okay.
Mr. Gordon, do you have any comments?
Would just say you agree that you're provided.
So I'm agreeing to adjourn based on the fact that I get a EIS.
Okay. Mr. Gordon?
That is correct. We do, there's actually 2 items noted under the bylaw. So the setback required is the greater of 30 meters from the normal high water mark or 15 meters from the top of bank.
Right.
We're not sure which one is the greater in this case because we can't currently discern the top of bank. And then the EIS is related to the new official plan, which is more stringent with regards to encroaching within the required setbacks. So the EIS would be required to support that encroachment to ensure that the minor variance meets the 4 tests.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Ms. Champagne, so do you think you'll be able to get an EIS completed in the next month or so?
Well, I think I can do it myself from what I'm
Okay.
seeing here, so it shouldn't be a problem. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that my property is on the other side of Mississippi Road, and the road is the high point between my property and the wetlands. So my property all slopes down to the river, so it's going to be, the impact to the wetlands is going to be very, like, I don't even see how it could impact the wetlands.
Okay. So right now we're just discussing the adjournment, not the
Right.
The substance of your application. So we have a couple of dates for you: April 20th or May 4th. Or yeah.
Let's go with April 20th.
Okay. I'd like to ask panel if they agree with the adjournment of this application until April the 20th. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Ms. Champagne, your application's been adjourned until April the 20th.
Thank you for your help today.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, so we're on to application number 3, I believe. This application is having to do with 3420 Baskins Beach Road. The agent on file is Mark Hartley. Mr. Hartley, are you available?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm here. Thanks.
Good morning. We have a request for an adjournment. Are you in agreement with this adjournment request?
Yes, I believe we agreed to adjourn to the next hearing on April 6th.
April 6th, okay. And Mr. Harrigan, are you available? Would you like to make some comments on behalf of the city?
Good morning. Through you, Mr. Chair, right now the subject application proposes an addition, a construction of a property that is within, or part of the clearing and the grading plan would be within the required official plan setbacks for the normal high water mark at the top of bank, and the area has been naturally vegetated. So this adjournment will allow us to have a conversation with the applicant just about what needs to be required to address that potential clearing within the required setbacks. So we are agreeable to an adjournment to April 6th.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to ask panel if they agree with the adjournment till April the 6th. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you very much, Mr. Hartley. Your application's been adjourned until April the 6th.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Now moving on to application number 4. This is having to do with 100 and 102 Constant Lake Road. I'm sorry if I make this up a little bit, mix this up. Hodderowitz. Sorry if I messed it up. Mr. Hodderowitz. There. I think your first name is Caesar. That's what I see on the phone, on the screen. You are muted, sir. Can you unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. we have an adjournment request for your application. Are you in agreement with that adjournment request, sir?
I wasn't aware that it was going to be adjourned.
Okay.
I'm not sure if my lawyer is present.
I don't know who your lawyer is.
Just trying to be present.
Is that Paul Francis?
That's Paul Francis, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Cesar?
Yes.
The Committee of Adjustments got a comment from the Planning Department, City of Ottawa with 10 conditions, among them a minor variance and such. So we have a lot of homework to do when you get back to Ottawa. So I suggest we request an adjournment to April 20th.
Okay.
All right. And I believe this is Mr. Gordon. Do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. There definitely are some things that need to be resolved. I don't know that it will address planning's concerns, but we'd be agreeable to an adjournment to allow the applicant to investigate those further and speak with us.
Okay, and would that be April 20th or May 4th, would you suggest?
I think May 4th may be a better option.
Mr. Francis, do you agree with that?
I have no problem with May 4th.
Okay. I'd like to ask the panel.
May the 4th be with us.
And I'd like to ask the panel for if they agree with the May 4th adjournment of this application. All those in favor? Your application is adjourned, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Moving on to application number 5, having to do with 8423 and 8365 Marionville Road. I'm looking for Mr. Darren McDonald. Are you available, sir? Good morning. I can see your name, sir. You're muted, Mr. McDonald. There you go. Good morning.
There we go. Good morning. Yes, we're in agreement to adjourn till April 6th.
April 6th. And I'd like to ask Mr. Harrigan, I believe. Nope, it's Mr. Gordon again. Sorry. Mr. Gordon, are you available?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're agreeable to the adjournment to April 6th.
Okay. I'd like to ask the panel if they're in favor of adjourning this application to April the 6th. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application has been adjourned to April the 6th, sir. Now moving on to applications number 7. Is Mr. Shipman available?
Good morning, Mr.
Good
Chair.
morning. Good morning, Mr. Shipman. Are you looking to have applications 7 and 8 adjourned today?
Sorry, this is for
Sorry, application 7 and 8.
unproven line, yes. No, we'd like to be heard today, please.
Okay. Mr. Harrigan, do you have any comments on behalf of the city? Mr. Harrigan.
I can speak to that report,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. Staff have some concerns with the location of the lot proposed through this swap, and we would prefer to see it moved and possibly work with the applicant towards that And that's the reason for our request for adjournment.
Okay.
Mr.
Panel?
Chair. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
There
Mr.
are
Chairman.
a number of reasons the applicant does not wish to move the lot to the suggested location, mostly to do with the buildability of the lot or the difficulty to develop the lot. Whether planning is suggesting to move it is a lower location. And the applicant farmer believes that development of a lot at that location would interfere with drainage in the adjacent agricultural field. The purpose of moving the existing lot is to improve the viability of the farmland, not to create an issue. So for that reason, the applicant does not, wants to move the lot to as proposed.
Okay, thank you. So all those in favor of hearing this application 7 and 8, please raise your hands. We'll hear your applications today, Mr. Shipman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the adjournment list is application number 13. Is having to do with 2535 Munster Road and 7661 Mansfield Road. Mr. Webster, are you available? You're muted, Mr. Webster. You're unmuted now. Are you with us? Mr. Webster? There you are. I can see you now. I can see the periodic table behind you, but I can't hear you. Cannot hear you. Muted again. Hello, Mr. Webster. You're still muted.
Mr. Webster, would you be able to phone in?
Yes, please call in. Please call in. Madam Coordinator, can you give him the phone number over the air?
Mr. Webster, could you dial 613-209-3054? You will then need to enter the webinar ID. It's 894-8601-4085.
Maybe just a little too quick for
Okay.
him.
Okay, so the phone number is 613-209-3054. The webinar ID that you will then have to enter is 894-8601-4085 and passcode 412568.
If you look on your screen, Mr. Webster, you'll have all the information there. Okay, so Mr. Webster, what we're going to do is we're going to set this down and you can try and connect with, you think? Yeah, we're going to set this down for a few minutes until you can get connection made up. And then we'll come back to you. So now we're going to move on to item number 16. Item number 16 is having to do with 3094 Barlow Crescent. Ms. Kelleher, are you available? I see your name, Ms. Kelleher. You need to be unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning. I understand you'd like to have this application or adjourned until April 20th.
Yes, it would not be our preference, but yes, there's additional information required by MVCA, I believe.
Okay, Mr. Gordon, any comments to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Planning does not have any concerns with the application, but we respect MVCA's request.
Okay, thank you very much. So this application is to be adjourned till April the 20th. Is that correct, Ms. Kelleher?
Yes, it is.
All those in favor, please raise your hands to have this application adjourned till April 20th. Your application is adjourned till April 20th, Ms. Kelleher. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Coordinator, did we get Mr. Webster back?
Mr. Chair, he's still on the call. We could try to connect again.
Yes, please. Hello, Mr. Webster, are you available?
Hello? Hello?
Hello, Mr. Webster.
Can you guys?
We're not having a very good connection here.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Mr. Webster, could you mute your computer?
I should be okay now.
Wow. Technology is a great thing when it works.
Anyway, we accept the adjournment, okay, guys?
Okay, so all those in favor of the adjournment of this application, please raise your hands. Application will be adjourned to after June 15th, correct? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Webster. Thanks for your patience. Okay. Now we'll move on to application number 17. This application is having to do with 3036 Upper Dwyer Hill Road. Mr. Murray, are you available?
Hello, yes.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Would you like
sir.
to have your application adjourned to April the 6th?
I understand it's the planning people who are requesting the adjournment, and we don't object to that.
All right. So I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this adjournment to April the 6th of this application. Please raise your hands if you agree. Your application has been adjourned to April the 6th. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
And application number 18 is next on the list. Mr. Shipman, are you available? This is having to do with 38968 8th Line Road and 7968 Marvelville Road.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Mr. Shipman. Are you in agreement with this application to be adjourned?
We are, Mr. Chair. We did meet with staff last week, and I believe we've come to resolution of the issues. However, I need a bit more time to put together some materials that they require in order to move forward. So if we could adjourn to perhaps the second meeting in April.
That would be the 20th, sir.
That would be fine.
I believe. Yep, it will be April the 20th. Mr. Gordon, do you agree with that timeline?
Yes, Mr. Chair, planning is agreeable to that timeline.
Okay. I'd like to ask the panel if they approve the adjournment of this application till April the 20th. All those in favor? Your application is adjourned till April the 20th, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to ask if there are any other applications that wish to be adjourned at this time. Okay, so now I don't see anyone that would like to have their application adjourned now. So I would like to move on now down to the first application on the list that has not been adjourned. That's application number 6. And application number 6. 6 is having to do with 17 and 19 Campbell Reed Court. Mr. Denome, are you available, sir?
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair. And sorry, I couldn't raise my hand or ask for an adjournment at the last minute there. So we'd like to request an adjournment to the next committee meeting, as it was determined that the application should be a law line adjustment, not a consent to sever.
Okay. Till April the 6th?
That works for us.
Okay. And let's see. Mr. Harrigan, are you available? Would you agree to that adjournment request till April the 6th?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department is agreeable to that adjournment request. We would just like to clarify that a recirculation is not required, as it is moving from a consent to sever to a lot line adjustment. Planning department feels it does not require, but it is want to confirm that with the chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harrigan. I'd like to ask the panel if they agree with this adjournment request to April the 6th. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application has been adjourned to April the 6th. Thank you very much, Mr. Denome.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Now moving on to applications 7 and 8. Mr. Shipman, are you available, sir?
Thank you. I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So I guess we'll deal firstly with 6303 Proven Line Road.
Yes,
Sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. These are applications are combined. They're the same proposal, essentially. This is essentially a lot line adjustment. I'm
Before we
sorry.
begin, I need to administer the oath for the signposting on the property. Can you take that oath now?
I believe Ms. Scouten may be available to take the oath.
I see your name is Scouten. Just need to unmute there you are.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I can declare that we did put the sign up on the property.
I've got to read something to you and then you can confirm.
No problem.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I swear.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Shipman, 5 minutes for this application description.
Thank you. This is an application to essentially move a lot from its previous location to the northwest, approximately 120 meters from its current location, locating it adjacent to the sideline of the adjacent farm parcel. The purpose of that is to improve the ability to access the available farmland in that area. I would mention that this is not a new lot creation application. It's more or less a lot line adjustment or a series of lot line adjustments to move an existing lot. There is no new lot creation. It's just moving the lot from one location to another, about 150 meters, 120 meters. So subsequent, the applicant, I've sort of come in at the 11th hour on this to help sort through some of the complexities. I understand subsequent to pre-consultation, the initial application was submitted as a lot line adjustment on October 5th. As such, I would note that the application was submitted at pre-consultation, and that was done. The application was submitted well before planning policy changed in respect to road widenings vis-a-vis lot line adjustments. At staff's request, sometime after October 5th, I'm not sure exactly what date, but a second application was submitted, ostensibly a lot creation application was submitted, which in my view should be a lot line adjustment, not a lot creation. As I said, there is no new lot creation here. It's simply a moving of the lot. So in principle, it's really not a lot creation application. In view of some of the comments, I'll just make a couple of comments here. There is a suggestion, as I mentioned at the outset, to move the lot down to the southwestern edge of the property. The applicant farmer is quite familiar with this property, does not wish to move it there for a couple of reasons. The major one being that he believes it would development of a lot at that location could very well serve to interfere with the farm drainage, as the direction and motion of the drainage there is towards that southerly end of the property. Secondly, the applicants of the belief that it would be harder to develop a lot at that location because it is lower, it require a lot more fill, which combined with my the first concern I mentioned could very well serve to create drainage issues between the farm and a lot at that location, since the drainage from the farm would be going onto or along that lot. So there is no desire to move to that location. Moving it up to the northwestern limit of the property will suffice to unlock that sort of orphan land there. So, finally, in relation to the discussion reducing the size of the lot, the applicant would like to maintain the approved lot size and area that's in existence from the existing lot that was created, I believe, back in 1996. Subsequent to perhaps some discussion, we can get on to the comments or to the proposed conditions.
Okay. Are you familiar with the 9 conditions associated with these 2 applications?
I am, Mr. Chair. Would you like me to comment on them at this point?
You might as well see if there's anything else that the planning can comment on afterwards.
Yeah, that probably worked best anyways. Condition number 1 and 2 are standard conditions. Condition number 3 is the road widening condition. I understand that planning policy of late recently has come forward on lot line adjustments to request road widenings across both the severed and retained portion. As I mentioned earlier, this is a lot line adjustment. It was submitted for long before that policy was put into effect. I'd also mentioned that the retained farmland, in this case, having frontage on 3 roads, a huge burden on the applicant to survey all of that road frontage in order to provide a road widening across the retained parcel. So there's no objection to putting a road widening across a severed parcel, which didn't exist on the existing lot that we're moving, but that's not, it's not a burden, so the applicant would be happy to provide that. But well, the survey cost alone would probably be 3 or 4 times the cost of surveying the new lot. It's just a burdensome thing, and given that this is really a lot line adjustment, not lot creation, it was submitted long before the policy to apply road widenings on the retained lands to lot line adjustment was in effect.
Mr. Shipman, it's really difficult to hear you. Can you just
Condition
maybe,
number 5, 6,
Mr. Shipman?
7.
Mr. Shipman? Mr. Shipman?
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Yes.
No, so maybe you want to just get rid of your video, because we're having difficulty hearing everything you were talking about when you were talking about the retained land. Still can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now,
perfect.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So conditions, hopefully that was sufficient explanation with respect to the widening across the retained land. As mentioned, it's extreme burden on the applicant to survey frontage along 3 sides of the farm. And this is, in fact, a lot line adjustment, not lot creation. And the application was submitted before there was a policy in effect asking for widenings across the retained portion vis-a-vis lot line adjustments. Condition.
Mr. Shipman, before you go forward on that, just so you know, maybe you can maybe Ms. Scouten can talk to you a little bit about this during the time we're debating these things. But the planning department has said that they will be pushing hard for this road widening. And to that end, they may end up going to legal and appealing the application to the tribunal. So just for information, that's all. But if you're willing to, it may delay your application and being finally approved. I just threw that out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps after I get through the remaining conditions, perhaps Ms. Scouten could weigh in regards to the concern relative to an appeal.
Okay.
Conditions number 5, 6, and 7 are sort of standard conditions. So those are fine. Condition number 8, again, relates to widening across the severed and retained portions. Again, being that this is a lot line adjustment submitted for consideration long before the policy was in place, we request that the widening not be imposed on the retained portion. Ms. Scouten will comment on that. Condition number 9 is the condition in regards to drilling a well and proving the water. Again, Mr. Chair, this is simply the movement of an existing lot. We don't feel that this groundwater well condition is appropriate in this case, given that it's essentially a lot line adjustment to an existing lot. It's not lot creation. Therefore, this condition should not be imposed. And that's takes us to the end of those conditions. Perhaps Ms. Scouten could make a brief comment with respect to the potential for an appeal on the road widening.
Thank you, Ms. Scouten.
Yes, thank you for the time. Just a few points to add. With this road widening, as Jeff mentioned, we started this process early October. I reached out to city officials and city planners to confirm what we were up against. And at that point, we were given the go-ahead, like the green light, saying there should be no issues. This looks to be doable. At that point, we were not alarmed by any extra costs that we may have to occur, such as this road widening. And again, I understand the OP was amended on October 27th, but we started this October 4th. It seemed like we had a lot of back and forth with the city when we were applying. It wasn't until November when they came back to us saying, by the way, you need to also submit another application to create a new lot, which again, we were arguing the point saying, but we're not creating a new lot. We're just moving the existing lot to the north edge so it doesn't interfere with the farm. And all the city officials and planners agreed that they wanted to keep the agricultural land and improve it. And that is what we were trying to do. Now, moving it to the south on Google Maps does look to be a better idea. But when you're actually standing in front of the field, you'll notice that in the south end of the field, it actually slopes, the topography of the field slopes to the south. So all the water is going that direction. Therefore, if you were to build a house, that you'd have to bring in fill, build it up, and that's going to impact our farm fields drainage. So I'm not an engineer, but I can say that that's not good planning if you're going to impact water drainage from the farm field. So that would be like our argument as to why we wouldn't want to move it to the south. And for the well condition, we're like Jeff said, we're merely just moving an existing lot that does not currently have a well condition in. So why would we move it and then create a new well condition? It just seems kind of, if we were creating a new lot, I understand we would have to abide by that policy, but we are not creating a new lot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Cutton. I'd like to ask Mr. Gordon for his comments, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a fair bit to comment on here. I would note that the transition policies provided by, or well approved by City Council, indicate that the submission date, the date that's effective for the application isn't necessarily the submission date, it's the date that it's deemed a complete application. And numerous of the submission materials are stamped this year. So this application wasn't truly complete until some point in 2022. So it should be considered under the new official plan. With regards to the drainage concern, we can take that into consideration, and perhaps the proposed location at the higher point is better, but there would be other options for putting a drain if it were moved to the south. The road widening and the well condition are required as under the new official plan. Lot line adjustments are considered development. It's explicitly stated, and they need to be treated as such. And while we understand there wasn't a well condition on the previous lot, we are moving a lot, and we need to verify that it can be serviced adequately and safely in order to allow that to occur.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Mr. Lewis, do you have any comments?
Yeah, just a question first, and it's in here somewhere, but I can't. The size of that lot, is it a 2-acre lot, Mr. Gordon?
I would have to check the report. One moment, please.
Maybe I should have went to Mr. Shipman. I'm sorry about that.
It's 1.69 hectares, so it's more like 4 acres.
So it's a larger lot. Okay, just a comment. I'm surprised that you're not treating it as a whole new lot creation and the ag zoning aspects not coming into it. However, I do support the moving of the lot with all the conditions, but I do support taking the road widening out and this corner triangle. But I think everything else is fair. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Otto. Any comments?
Agree with Mr. Lewis. However, I do question the need for drilling the well or the water report. However, I guess I could live with that with removing the road widening conditions.
Okay, Mr. Vervoort?
I agree with the comments from Mr. Lewis and Mr. Otto. I think we have to be somewhat reasonable and flexible here. So we're improving an existing situation, and I think in this case, it's almost penalizing the applicant for doing something that's going to improve the utility of the agricultural operation. So I would agree with removing the road widening conditions. I would apply it to the new parcel. I think everybody's agreeable to that, and Mr. Shipman indicated he would be agreeable to that. And I think it's reasonable to impose the well condition as well.
Thank you, Mr. Vervoort. Ms. Chandler?
I agree with Mr. Vervoort.
Thank you. I would like to ask the panel for approval of this application with conditions number 3 and 8, removing the requirement for road widening, taking road widening on the retained lands, and leaving in the aquifer report on condition number 9. All those in favor of this application with those conditions modified, please raise your hands. Your applications are approved, Ms. Scout, and Mr. Shipman, with those conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now where is this? Now we're moving on to application number 9. This application has to do with 6830 Harbor Street. Mr. West, are you available?
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, Mr. West. So we'd like to proceed with this. If you'd like to give us a brief description of your application, reminder that 5 minutes is the requirement or the constraint. Please proceed.
Understood, Mr. Chair, though I believe we have to administer the oath.
Correct. Thanks for that. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do swear.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So the applications that are in front of you this morning are severance applications on the property municipally known as 6830 Harbor. The context of the subject property is shown in the image in front of you. It's located within the village of Fitzroy Harbor, located within the West Carleton Ward March in the city. You can see the relation of the subject property, which is shown in yellow, to the village and the Otto River on the slide in front of you. Let me switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the image in front of you is a more zoomed in version of the previous image. The subject property is a corner lot. It has frontage on Harbor, Nicholson, and Hiram Wilson. It's approximately 0.86 hectares in area. It contains a vacant institutional building that is proposed to be demolished, which you can see on the bottom corner of the image in front of you. It's designated village in the City of Ottawa official plan and village core in the City of Ottawa new official plan. It's zoned as village mixed use subzone, which is VM in the zoning bylaw. Switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the image on the left side of your screen highlights the first severance application, which will create lot 1. Lot 1 will have an area of approximately 0.45 hectares. It is understood that lot 1 will be developed with a semi-detached dwelling with secondary dwelling units. And the image on the right side of your screen shows the second severance application, which will create lot 2. Lot 2 will have an area of approximately 0.4 hectares, and it's understood that lot 2 will be developed with a detached dwelling. Both lot 1 and lot 2 will be compliant with the minimum lot width and minimum lot area requirements of the VM zone. And just for everyone's clarification, there are no minor variances being sought for these applications. I'll now speak to the rationale for the severance applications. So with respect to the PPS, policy 1.1.4.2 directs growth to rural settlement areas to support the viability of rural areas, and Fitzroy Harbor is a rural settlement area. With respect to the Planning Act, subsection 5312 of the Planning Act authorizes the Committee of Adjustment to approve severance applications if they are satisfied that the plan of subdivision is not required for the orderly development of the municipality, and the proposal does not necessitate the construction of new public infrastructure, including roads and services, and as such, a plan of subdivision is not required. With the criteria under subsection 5124 of the Planning Act, with respect to A, the proposed development is regard for several matters of provincial interest, including the adequate provision of a full range of housing and the appropriate location of growth and development. With respect to B, the proposed lots have adequate area for the provision of private services, and as such, the severances are not premature. With respect to C, I'll come back to this in a moment. With respect to D and F, subject properties in the VM zone, and the VM zone requires a minimum lot area of 1,350 meters squared and a minimum lot width of 20 meters. The proposed lots conform to the minimum requirements of the zoning bylaw, and as such, they are suitable for the purposes for which they are being subdivided, and the dimension and shape of the lots are suitable as well. With respect to I, there is no new demand for utilities or public services resulting from these severance applications. With respect to J, the proposed development requires the demolition of the Fitzroy Centennial School, which was shown in the aerial photograph. This is the decrepit building on the subject property, and it was closed by the Ottawa Carleton District School Board in September 2009, which is well over a decade ago. Since then, the building has fallen into more disrepair. The village of Fitzroy Harbor also has the St. Michael's School, which is located approximately 400 meters to the north of the subject property. There are other schools nearby, including Stonecrest Elementary School, and in the rural area, there is always the rural school bus services. Coming back to C, which is for the official plan, subject property is designated village on Schedule A of the City of Ottawa official plan, which is the current official plan. And policy 7 of section 3.7.1 states that permitted uses will include residential uses, which is obviously what we are proposing through these severances. Policy 10 of this section details the policies related to development within villages, which states that a wide range of housing forms to meet the needs of the village population will be permitted. And where new lots are proposed for residential purposes that rely upon private services, the minimum lot area shall be 0.4 hectares. We are complying with both those policies. With respect to the new official plan, the subject property is designated village core, and policy 1 of section 9.4.2 A states that residential uses will be permitted. The policy 3 of section 9.4.2, which is rather interesting, states that the city will advocate for changes to provincial guidelines to make it easier to develop multifamily residential units in villages. And it's understood that lot 1 will be developed with the semi-detached dwellings with secondary dwelling units, which could be akin to this policy promoting multifamily residential units within villages.
1 minute, Mr. West.
Excellent. So I'd just like to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I'd just like to take the committee quickly through the Village of Fitzroy Harbor secondary plan. And if the coordinator could switch to the next slide, please, in the interest of time. Some of the comments we've received from municipal staff are with respect to policy 3 of the Village of Fitzroy Harbor secondary plan. And it's the first line of policy 3, which speaks that where development is proposed. And these A through G, or policies 3A through G, were the policies that the city raised in their comments. And these specifically relate to when development is proposed. And municipal staff had a comment that spoke to there was no plan submitted with these applications, and they were unsure or they were of the opinion that these severances could be considered premature since there was no plans and we couldn't address these policies. So with respect to these policies, they specifically applied to development, which is not a defined term in the Village of Fitzroy Harbor secondary plan. But I'd like to just remind the committee that there are absolutely no variances being sought with respect to any proposed buildings on the sites, they will be fully compatible with the zoning bylaw. And if the coordinator can switch to the next slide, please.
30 seconds, Mr. West.
Understood. The decision of the OMB decision for 514 Manor Avenue, which I won't get into too much details, but this was a minor variance and severance application for which the proponent did not submit building plans. And even with minor variances for lot area and lot width, the Ontario Municipal Board ruled that building plans, including the design, were not required, and it would be inappropriate to deem a severance application premature, even if they were provided. If the coordinator switch to the next slide, please. Further, we have another LPAT decision for the procedural order at 694 Roosevelt that further solidified the case that detailed building plans are not required for severance applications, and it would be inappropriate to deem these severance applications premature if no plans are provided. And we are not required to provide detailed building plans for severance applications, specifically when there are no minor variances being sought for anything related to the development of buildings on the site. Let's go to the next slide, please. So it's in our conclusion, the severance applications are consistent with PPS. Severance applications do not necessarily construct new public infrastructure. Plan of subdivision is not required. The application for severance are consistent with the criteria set out in section 5124 of the Planning Act, and the severance applications are not considered premature. I'd be happy to speak to the LPAT and the OMB decisions that I briefly mentioned in my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Just regarding the some administrative items, I think the staff that noted that legal description should read part of lot 208 and 211, lots 209 and 210, plan 77. It should be part 1 on registered plan 4R9537. Is that correct, Mr. West?
Yeah, that's correct.
And having to do with B0043, that the dimensions on Nicholson Street is 96.56 meters. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Now, you've taken a look at the conditions, I assume, to this application, if it's to be heard, ruled on today. Do you have any comments on those 9 conditions?
We're fine with the conditions. My understanding is that Mr. Harrigan was looking to speak to another condition. And so I'll let Mr. Harrigan speak to that now if he'd like to.
Okay, Mr. Harrigan, your comments, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps I'll just start at the beginning and then touch base on the condition at the end, if that's appropriate.
That's fine.
Agreeable with you.
Yep.
So the subject application seeks to demolish the existing school, which has been abandoned for quite some time now and has been run down fairly consistently over the years, and to sever them to create a single attached dwelling as well as a semi-detached, so creating multi-unit family residential dwellings. This is absolutely consistent with the official plan and the secondary plan for this area, and as such is fairly consistent and appropriate development. The planning department did note some concerns, just that the school does have a heritage designation, and that does require a little bit more consideration for that. Primarily, the first aspect is that heritage buildings are meant to be maintained, but given the present state of the school, it may not be feasible to maintain or to restore the school. So with that regard, we do have some concerns about that, but would direct the applicant to the Ontario Heritage Act just to make sure that if they are going to be demolishing the school, it does need to follow the required legislation for that. Staff did note that there was potential that this application was a little premature just with the lack of building details. That is, again, it is a minor concern that we do have. We would like to see those design details in advance just to ensure that the secondary plan is adhered to. However, given that this is appropriate development and lot creation and the proposed multi-unit dwellings are appropriate for this location, those concerns really are quite minor in nature. The condition that during the review of the application, it was determined that schools of this nature almost exclusively have underground fuel storage tanks, and they almost exclusively leak as well too. So to that regard, the planning department spoke with Mr. West and Mr. Chow to let them know that a phase 1 environmental site assessment would be required just to demonstrate whether there is contaminants on the site or not. And if that does identify that there's potential contaminants on site, that should be followed up with a phase 2 ESA just to make sure that the proper contamination sources are addressed to in that manner. So the department will be seeking an amendment to the application, the planning report, just to include that condition. We have provided specific wording to Mr. West and Mr. Chow. They've just noticed in my email that they would like to modify one of the wording. So I would like to perhaps talk with Mr. West and Mr. Chow after the hearing just to finalize the exact wording of that condition. We'd like to see absolutely a phase 1 ESA included as a condition, and potentially phase 2 ESA if the phase 1 indicates as such.
Thank you, Mr. Harrigan. I'd like to ask the panel for their comments. Mr. Otto?
I'm okay with the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
No problem with the application. Just if they can work out that ESA condition, that's no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vervoort.
Sorry, I don't understand condition number 9, a memo outlining wildlife protection during construction. I'm not sure what that's all about. I don't think it's necessary, but I think maybe instead of that condition, we would just want a condition the applicant confirming that they can get a demolition permit for the school. Because if they can't, then this whole thing doesn't work. So I'm not sure. But that seems to be an issue before they can go ahead with the severance.
Are you addressing that to anyone in particular, Mr. Vervoort?
I see Mr. Chown has his hand raised, so maybe he wants to weigh in on this.
Okay, Mr. Chown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Vervoort, for raising condition 9. I'm not entirely sure what the relevance of that condition is on this particular property, which is really in the core of the village. It's not out in the rural area where we're dealing with wildlife, so I would support removing that condition. I would have no concern with replacing that condition that we satisfy the committee that we've received a demolition permit for the school. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Ogden, you have a comment on the condition number 9?
Conditions specifically to the demolition, the Ottawa Septic System Office has requested that a condition of the consent application be the demolition of the existing building.
Thank you. And Ms. Chandler, do you have any comments?
I agree with removing the wildlife condition. I'm a little concerned. There's 2 conditions being suggested now. One is the demolition of the building before, like as a condition. And the second one was to show that the building will be able to be removed. Those are 2 different things. I don't know if a demo can be satisfied within the time frame for registration. Maybe someone could speak to that.
Mr. Harrigan?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, there was a few things just to note there. Particularly condition number 4 already does speak to the demolition of the building. It doesn't specifically say demolition permit, but it does say that the existing building has been removed, the existing sewer system decommissioned, and the existing well abandoned. That would be to the satisfaction of the development review manager, so that does ensure that it would be done to the proper building code demolition permitting process. I would like to note as well for condition number 9, there are a number of species at risk within the area, particularly barn swallows, bats, chimney swifts, that may be within the existing building and also within the floodplain that is within close proximity. So there are a number of environmental concerns to it. That being said, the department felt that a formal environmental impact statement was not required, as it's mainly dealing with species at risk here. So number 9, the condition number 9 is just stating that the best practices that would usually be recommended in an environmental impact statement are just implemented. So ensuring that whenever they're doing the demolition, they follow the correct procedures, such as investigating the property to make sure that there's no species there, no breeding habitat there, removing them as needed or as appropriate for that one as well too, and then also doing whenever they're doing construction, just to make sure that, again, they're following all of the correct provincial legislation that is required. So this is seen as a compromise on a formal environmental impact statement, just to have a memo sent that just details how the construction crews will follow the correct provincial legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Harrigan. Ms. Chandler, anything further?
I think Mr. Chum may have a response to it.
Mr. Chown?
So I thank Mr. Harrigan for those comments and reminding us all of condition 4, which deals with the demolition of the building and removal of the existing septic system. To the question about whether or not we could fulfill that condition before the approval lapse, I guess 2 things. One, I'll remind the committee that with the recent changes to the Planning Act, we now have 2 years to clear conditions, and instead of the 1 year that we were all struggling with for the last decade or two. But practically speaking, the process of getting a heritage permit at the City of Ottawa is really quite quick. They have a statutory obligation to make a decision on an application within 90 days of filing an application. So we'll have no difficulty dealing with the demolition within the time frame under the Act for clearing conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, Ms. Chandler?
No, I think number 4 is covered off then. I just wanted to make sure. And the wildlife condition, I'm sort of going to take it or leave it. I'm not going to try and change that if everybody's comfortable with it.
Okay. Mr. Vort, you're comfortable with number 4 satisfying your concern about the demolition?
Yes, that's fine. I'm still not sure about number 9, because it just seems to be that they have to comply with the law that's in effect anyway. So I'm not sure what the purpose is of it, to be quite frank, but I don't know if the applicant has a comment on condition number 9.
Chair, we'd be happy to see it removed if the majority of the committee are prepared to do that.
Okay. All right, so I'd like to ask the panel to, first of all, would they like to have condition number 9 removed? All those in favor of removing condition number 9, please raise your hands. So we'll take that note of that, but adding another condition, which is the phase 1 ESA, all in agreement with adding that condition to this application? Okay, so I would like to ask the panel now to approve this application with the memo outlining wildlife protection during construction removed, and that being replaced with a phase 1 ESA. All those in favor of approval of this application with those 9 conditions, please raise your hands. Your applications are approved, Mr. West, Mr. Chown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day now.
Okay. Now we're moving on to application number 10 and 11. Mr. Polton, are you available? This application is having to do with 2502 and 2490 Scrivens Drive.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Good morning, Mr. Polton. I would like to administer an oath concerning the signposting on the property. Are you available to take that oath today?
I am, but I'd like to provide some additional information before taking the oath with regard to the signs. Also, it appears my camera is not working, but you can hear me. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Excellent. Okay. So in terms of the committee signs, they were originally posted on December 23rd. The signs remain posted and visible and legible until the first hearing date on January 12th. After that date, I took a site visit this morning and discovered that the consent sign is missing. The minor variance sign is still present and legible on the property. Just before confirming the signs were posted until the hearing date, I just wanted to provide this information for in the interest of full disclosure.
Okay. Now, I don't believe there's any comments from the public at this time. Oh, there was one, I believe. Is that the next one? No, there wasn't any comments from the public. So I believe everybody was able to have clear view of that property. So are you prepared to take that oath now?
I am prepared, yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
Yes, I swear.
Thank you. Please proceed with a brief description of your application, keeping in mind a 5-minute time limit.
Okay, thanks very much. So I've prepared some presentation slides. They should be hopefully showing up shortly. So before you today, there's an application for consent and minor variance to sever a new parcel from the property at 2502 Scribbins Drive. This is a large rural property. It's just northwest of Metcalfe, the village of Metcalfe. As well as you can see, it's north of Snake Island Road for some greater context. So the next slide is zoomed in, and it's just a closer view of the property and the severed parcel and what's going on along the frontage of Scribbins Drive. So the consent application is to sever a new 10-acre lot. That's the severed parcel. It'll be 4 hectares. The retained lands will be 26 hectares. That's 65 acres. Minor variances are required in support of this severance. The retained lands, you can see it has narrow frontage along Scribbins Drive. The severance itself will accommodate the existing detached dwelling on the property, well and septic system. The retained lands will be vacant and is largely used for agriculture. The property is designated general rural area in the City of Ottawa's official plan, and it's also zoned rural countryside. The variances are required because in terms of how lot width is measured in the city's zoning bylaw, it's measured from the front yard setback required. So you can see it results in about 44 meters of frontage, and relative to the large retained parcel, it's not reflective of the actual size of the retained parcel. If we go to the next slide, it should show the sketches. So you can see the 10-acre severed lot and the 55-acre retained lot. You can see lot depth and lot width are measured on this sketch, and you can see our request for 44 meters lot width for the retained land, and you can see where that's being measured from relative to the actual size of the retained land. If we go to the next slide, it shows our minor variance sketch. So the general rural area and the rural countryside zone permit agricultural uses as well as residential uses. We're requesting 2 variances through this application. One is to recognize the existing use of the land primarily as agriculture, and that requires a lot width of 50 meters in the RU zone. And so what's proposed is 44 meters. And in the owner has indicated that they would like to develop a detached dwelling on the retained lands in the future. In the interest of that application in the future, they'll need a building permit. So they'll also need a variance for a reduced lot width for a residential use. So that is the second variance we're requesting. I will now speak to the consent application and the minor variance application in terms of tests. So in terms of the consent application, under the policies of the PPS, it identifies that rural lands are appropriate for new residential uses. This property, certainly of the retained lands, are sufficiently of sufficient size to accommodate a new detached dwelling on the property. In terms of the tests for subdivision, obviously we're proposing one new lot that's accommodating existing detached dwelling. A plan of subdivision is not required in support of this application and the development. Moving on to the 4 tests. So in terms of the official plan, again, the property is designated general rural area and is designated general rural area. New residential uses are supported through severance applications. In this case, we're just putting a new residential use on the retained lands instead of the severed lands. So it meets the intent and purpose of the official plan and the general rural area designation. In terms of the zoning bylaw, the variances we're requesting are technical in nature due to the narrow frontage. The lot that's severed was required to be wider just to accommodate the existing house, septic system, and well. There's sufficient size on the property to develop attached dwelling and access it through a driveway. So in terms of the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, it's a detached dwelling is a permitted use, and agriculture certainly is permitted use. We feel we meet the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. In terms of appropriate for the development of the land, the 44-meter frontage certainly will accommodate a driveway to access a dwelling on the property. Also, a building permit application will be required in the future, and that through that building permit application, all the performance standards of the zoning will be required to be met. So we feel it's appropriate for the development of the land. And is it minor? Again, it's a similar argument. There is sufficient frontage to access the retained lands off of Scribbins Drive. We're severing an existing dwelling, and there's a parcel to the north that's currently vacant. We don't see any impact to adjacent properties through our request for minor variance, so we feel that variances are minor. So that's my run through of the proposed applications, the proposed development, and the minor variances.
Thank you very much, Mr. Poulton. Are you aware of those 6 conditions on this application if it's approved today?
We are, yes.
Are you in agreement with them?
We are in agreement, yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Harrigan for his comments on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department has no concerns with the subject application, subject to the requested conditions.
Thank you very much. I note that there is a comment from the public. Mr. Kevin Dool, are you available? Would you like to make a comment, sir?
Mr. Chair, he does not appear to be on the call.
Thank you very much. Just for the record, he objects to the variances to the lot width, and he's concerned about the drainage issues in neighboring properties. I believe some of the conditions do solve those issues for him. To that end, I'd like to ask the panel, Ms. Chandler, any comments?
No, none. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
I'm happy with the application, thanks.
Mr. Otto? I can't hear you. Okay.
I'm fine with it, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Verwoerd?
No questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask the panel. Sorry? Okay, I'd now like to ask the panel for approval of this application number 10 and 11 with all 6 conditions. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved. Mr. Poulton, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. Now moving on to application number 12. This is having to do with 3590 and 3578 Torwood Drive. Alexander Main, are you available? You are muted, Mr. Main.
Hello.
Good
Good
morning.
Here.
Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
I would like to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on the property. Can you take that oath today?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, as instructed, and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I
Do you
do.
swear?
I
Thank
swear.
you. Thank you very much. Let me see. So can you provide a brief description of your application and reminder that it's 5 minutes is the time limit?
Yeah, will do. Thank you, Mr. Chair, councilors. If the coordinator could put up the aerial map, that would be great. So this is a 21 acre parcel on the Ottawa River. This is my current property. It includes my residence. Can you see the map, or is that not up yet? Oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah, this is a 21 acre parcel. My residence is on the existing property. Will be on the retained property. The proposal is to sever approximately 8 acres in a mostly rectangular lot on the south side of the property. There will be 50-meter frontage on Torwood Drive in accordance with the regulations, and approximately 71 meters of waterfront. The area has been identified as a rural natural features due to the significant woodlands. This severance will mean that no further severances are allowed. It will preserve the remaining woodland from further development. From this aerial map, you can see that there's a subdivision, Armitage Avenue, to the north, where the lots are much smaller, and to the southeast, there are similar long lots that are usually a bit smaller as well, about 5 to 8 acres. The property currently has a shared driveway with the neighbors to the southeast at 3572 Torwood. We have agreed with those neighbors to continue to share the driveway between the neighbors, including the retained lot and the severed lot. And according to one of the conditions from the city, we will enter into a joint use agreement. The reason for continuing to share the driveway is that we just want to avoid cutting down the trees and destruction of habitat that would occur by putting in a 260-meter driveway. This area has a lot of trails and is used by various neighbors for walking. Here's thank you, coordinator, for putting up the detailed sketch. You can see the severed portion to the south and the retained portion to the north. There will be a new right-of-way across the severed land to get to my residence. At the waterfront, you can see there is a floodplain. There's also a stable slope hazard identified by Mississippi Valley Conservation. Plus any development must be 30 meters back from the normal high water. So we've proposed a 0.2 hectare building site that is the farthest back from the most restrictive of these, which is the stable slope hazard. So it's 15 meters back from the stable slope hazard, and thus is outside the Mississippi Valley Conservation Area regulated area. So this is a rocky ridge. It's probably about 8 meters above the high water mark. It's a previously disturbed area that is partially cleared from an old cottage that was once located there. In addition, the building site is to be set back 15 meters from either property line. We want to, the Mississippi is asking for a development plan, as is the city, but we will also put in a requirement for a 15-meter tree buffer with restrictions on cutting down any mature trees next to the property line. So that was decided in collaborations with the neighbors to the south, really just to maintain privacy and separation between the residences. So that will be put into the development agreement. There are 9 conditions requested by the city. I find many of them quite onerous, but I will accept them all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Main. Are you aware of the one condition that the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority has requested?
Yes. Yes,
And are you-
I mean, that will be to put in a development plan and register
Yep.
that. I did update the sketch to, show the setbacks, but yeah, we do need to properly identify those setbacks, I guess, on a survey. I imagine an official or proper survey will also be a condition. So we need to identify that. Should be done at the time.
Okay. I'd now like to ask Mr. Harrigan to comment on behalf of planning.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the Planning Department has minor concerns with the application, primarily due to the location of the driveway. Currently, the driveway location goes along the southern interior lot line, where it would be the severed lot, and then cuts across at about halfway through the severed lot to access the existing driveway. This means that the driveway will either be right at the front yard or right at the rear yard of where the current development envelope is, depending on the resolution of those issues. It doesn't reflect best planning practices to have a driveway going through either the front yard or the rear yard of a new dwelling. So we do have some minor concerns with preservation and implementing the driveway. So ideally, we'd like to see a new driveway put in there, mapped out as the least impact to existing trees and mature vegetation. But we do acknowledge that there is some consideration for the trees maintaining the driveway. It's just not the best in terms of land use planning practices. For the committee's benefit, there are ongoing conversations with the applicant about the current location of the development envelope. It hasn't currently been supported by an environmental impact statement for the development envelope. It has been supported for the lot line, so we are agreeable to have it as resolved as a condition of approval, but just to be aware that there are ongoing resolutions for the development envelope location.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask our conservation partners for their comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted, the property is regulated by the Conservation Authority as there is floodplain and the stable slope erosion hazard for the Ottawa River. It has been appropriately demonstrated that the development envelope will be located beyond these hazards and the Conservation Authority's regulatory limit. And an appropriate condition has been proposed to ensure that the development envelope is implemented as a part of the severance application. So we have no concerns.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ogden. I'd like to ask the panel for their comments. Ms. Chandler?
I think what I understood from both Mr. Harrigan and Ms. Ogden is the development envelope looks good, will be adjusted if required, and a development envelope will be registered through a development agreement. And provided that I understood all that correctly, then I have no concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort, any comments?
No comments or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto?
Just one question. I thought in rural areas we had to have at least 25 acres left after a severance. Has that policy changed?
Mr. Harrigan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is for the general severance policy. This is applying under the infill policy. So the infill policy does permit infill development, provided that it meets some very strict criteria. These lot sizes are slightly larger than what we'd normally see for infill development, but it does meet all the criteria. So we are satisfied with that.
Yeah.
Mr. Lewis, any comments?
Not to hold up the process. Number 9, geotechnical report. Mr. Harrigan, what exactly are you looking for in that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, right now the main concern is there is a significant slope stability hazard that's located along the Ottawa River. This geotechnical report needs to demonstrate that the building location is appropriate given that slope stability hazard, but also needs to take a look at some of the more details in terms of possible bedrock outcrops, karst topography, and thin soil. So there is a lot of concerns about potential building locations, but absolutely the most concerning is the slope stability hazard. So this report will just demonstrate that the building location, which will have to be confirmed with the environmental impact statement, is also supported with all of the slope stability hazards.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask the panel for approval of this application with 9 conditions from planning and 1 condition from their conservation partners. All those in favor of this application, please raise your hands. Your applications are approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Main.
Thank you.
Now we're moving on to application number 14. 14. It's having to do with 3946 Dwyer Hill Road. Bobby Chapman, are you available?
I am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to administer an oath concerning the signposting on your property. Can you take that oath this morning?
I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do.
Please proceed with a brief description of your application.
So good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. So I just want to say this severance, the 98 acres, it's currently owned by my parents and my sisters who reside at the 3946 Dwyer Hill Road. They currently own 98 acres and they've given me permission to sever off up to 5 acres. So it would be fronting 178 meters on Dwyer Hill, and then the depth would go back 98 meters. There has been no concerns from planning, Rideau Valley, Bell, Hydro, and the right-of-way. So I'm hoping that I'm able to put the severance through and I can build a house there where I can go back to my homestead, which has been in our family for over 80 years. So that's what my plan is, to build a retirement home there.
Great. Now, are you familiar with the 7 conditions that planning is requesting?
I am. I do have one question about number 6. So with the corner site triangle, I'm not actually on the corner of Purdy and Dwyer Hill. The original lot obviously goes to Dwyer Hill and Purdy, but my land is north of that. So I'm not sure if that applies to my lot or that stays with what is left with my parents' lot.
Mr. Harrigan.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the site triangle is very similar to the road widening condition. As lot creation is development on the subject site as it currently is, the road widening and the right-of-way protections do apply to the entire parcel. So the site triangle is part of that road widening requirement under the official plan. So that site triangle would be conveyed to the city just to help protect intersections and allow for any improvements or maintenance that may be required. So it would be taken from the retained land to be given to the city.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Chapman?
It does, yes, thank you.
Okay.
And then the only other thing was number 7 with the environmental impact statement. And I did talk to Sean already about it. I guess it wasn't pushed through with the package because when I did apply, it was given at that time. But I guess they're going to go ahead and follow through and look at that as well because it was submitted.
Okay, thank you. I note that our conservation partners don't have any objections to this application. And given that and the comments from planning, I'd like to ask our committee if they approve of this application with all 7 conditions. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Ms. Chapman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Now, moving on to application number 15. Application number 15 has to do with 2973 and 2961 Stagecoach Road. Ms. Zander, are you available?
Again, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, Ms. Zander. I need to administer an oath concerning this application on the signposting. Are you available to take that oath?
My client should be here, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bird I think might be phoning in. He should be able to take the oath for the signage.
I see Angela Bird.
Angela, yes.
Okay. Ms. Bird, you're muted.
Hi there.
Good morning. I'd like to administer an oath concerning the signposting.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I swear.
Thank you very much. Ms. Zander, I note that there's not any concerns on behalf of the planning department. And do we have any concerns from, we don't have any concerns from the Conservation Authority either, but we do have 8 conditions concerning this application. Are you in agreement with all 8 conditions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is a reapplication of a severance that lapsed, unfortunately. So we have reviewed the conditions and have no concerns.
Great, thank you very much. Panel, I'd like to ask for approval of this application with all 8 conditions. Please raise your hands if you agree. Your application is approved, Ms. Zander. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now we're moving on to item number 18. Item number 18 deals with 3896 8th Line Road and 7968 Marvelville Road. Mr. Shipman, are you available?
Mr. Chair, I believe that application was adjourned to the April 20th hearing.
Oh, good point. Yep, I've got no oath here. That's what got me confused. Okay. Do we have any other applications to hear today, Madam Coordinator?
Mr. Chair, I believe we do not. I think we're done.
Perfect. Great. So I'd like to adjourn this hearing. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you, everybody, for your help.